Hello, everyone. I'm Emily.
And I'm Hannah.
And we are the hosts of the I Don't Think So podcast. Each episode, we discuss a different story, theory, or mystery, and we decide if we think it's believable or if we really don't think so.
Here at the I Don't Think So podcast, we are affiliated with Fairies Sports, and we present our theories on your favorite place to listen to podcasts every Wednesday. If you like what you hear, definitely share our show and follow us on our socials at I Don't Think So _EH. Or check out our YouTube at IDTS Conspiracies.
Absolutely. Give us a follow on there. We'll try and start posting on our X a little bit more regularly as we come into these summery spring months. Can you believe it? Third week of March already.
It's officially spring.
It's spring. That ground squirrel told me it was spring, and I
think so. By the time this gets posted,
what's the first
it'll be the first day of spring the next day.
Sorry.
Isn't it the 21st usually?
I don't know. Summer equinox is in June, so I'm not going to be able to help you much there. Meh. Listen.
I think it's March.
It's spring, and I've decided. We're there. So follow us along a little bit more on our folklore, kind of mythological creature month, which I just feel like, I don't know why, it makes me think of spring. Like folklore-y type things is...
I mean, we started with two very traditionally, like, Irish
Marchy things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Hannah, the one that I decided to do this week that we wanted to talk about is a very well-known mythological creature, I guess you could say, or folklore creature. But I kind of wanted to look into the research of it a little bit deeper, and I just think they're cool.
Okay.
So today we're going to talk about fairies.
Ooh!
Yeah!
Mm-hmm.
She was a fairy. So, I guess, what do you think of when you think of, like, fairies?
So my initial, like, fairy is, like... Disney Tinkerbell collection of like all the little earthy fairies, and there's fairies of like water fairies and earth fairies and fire fairies and air fairies. I don't know. I feel like they went with the elements.
Yeah, definitely.
Am I right?
Kind of. Yeah. I mean, so fairy is kind of this term that, like, when I get into it more, has been used in a lot of different ways.
Sure.
And it can mean a lot of different things. So myths and stories about fairies don't have a single origin. They're rather kind of a collection of folk beliefs from different sources. Various folk theories about the origins of fairies include casting them as either like demoted angels or demons, and that comes from Christian tradition. They could be deities as a pagan belief system, spirits of the dead, prehistoric precursors to humans, or as spirits of nature. Okay. Which I think a lot of times when we see them in like movies and things like that, they typically are derived from like spirits of nature.
Sure.
Think like Fern Gully, you know? Like they're like, oh, we tend the flowers.
Yeah, exactly.
The label of fairy has at times applied to only a specific magical creature with like a human appearance, magical powers, and a penchant for trickery. At other times, it's also been used to describe any magical creature such as goblins and gnomes.
So they fell under the realm of fairies.
Fairies, yes. So fairy has at times been used as an adjective when meaning equivalent to enchanted or magical. Also used as a name for the place that these like beings could come from, or the land of the fairy.
Okay.
A recurring thing of this legend about fairies is the need to ward off fairies using protective charms. Common examples of charms include church bells, wearing clothes inside out, a four-leaf clover, and food.
Interesting.
I know. I was like, my dad's great at that then, because he's always got a shirt on inside out.
Just warding off those fairies.
He said, fuck the fairies. Got you. Fairies were also sometimes thought of to haunt like specific locations and lead travelers astray using will-o'-the-wisps.
What does that mean?
Will-o'-the-wisp. Do you remember Brave, the movie at all? Those like little
I've
lighted...
never seen Brave.
Oh!
I know. I've seen like the first part of it.
Offended.
And then like every time I've tried to start watching it, it's been like, oh, it was on TV and I got like the first 10 minutes.
So Will-o'-the-wisp, as depicted at least in like the movie Brave, and from what I can understand from them, they are like little glowing orbs in a lot of ways.
Oh, sure. Okay.
That can like lead you away.
Like trolls?
They're not like they don't have like a body.
No, like in the movie Trolls where they have the little balls of light they're following.
Basically.
Or
and
like
they make like tinkling noises.
What is the movie I'm thinking of? Keep going, I'll think. There's something where they're like following a little ball of light.
Finding Nemo?
No.
Just keep moving.
Oh, that's funny. Okay.
Yeah. Before the invention of modern medicine, fairies were also blamed for sickness, particularly tuberculosis and birth deformities.
Now
we love
because you were drinking unpasteurized milk that you got tuberculosis.
It would be the fact that you coughed on each other and had never washed your hands a day in your life. Who knows, you know?
Them fairies, though.
It's probably them. In addition to their folkloric origins, fairies were a common feature of Renaissance literature and Romantic art, and were especially popular in the United Kingdom during the Victorian and Edwardian eras. The Celtic revival also saw fairies established as a canonical part of Celtic cultural heritage. I've heard of canonical, but when I saw it read, like spelled out, I was like...
So everything just leads back to the Irish.
So much of these things, because originally I was going to do gnomes, because I think they're so fun. And we were going to talk about Romeo and Juliet.
Next week.
Thank you. And so many of it was like relating back to fairies. And I was like...
So it's pretty much... This is the precursor for next week.
Yes. You're welcome, everybody. So, little historical development on fairies.
Elton John's here. Sorry.
Elton John's our guest. I saw an Elton John
cover band.
Phenomenal.
That's fun.
He played the piano with his feet.
You know, that's not selling me.
Better than I can play piano with my hands. And he wore huge platform heels.
Okay.
He looked like Elton John, sang like Elton John. He was so fun.
That's great. Job. Still don't like feet.
Well, he had boots on. It wasn't like his toes were playing fiddling the keys.
I don't know if that's better.
I wish my toes could do that. Anyways. The term fairy is sometimes used to describe any magical creature, including goblins and gnomes, while other times the term describes only a specific type of ethereal creature or sprite.
That's kind of... I always didn't put like gnomes and stuff with them.
I didn't either. Explanations for the origins of fairies range from Persian mythology to the folklore of the Brythonic, Gaelic, and Germanic peoples. These also came from like Middle French medieval romances times.
I feel like if you look at a lot of like Native American folklore and history, like they didn't necessarily call them fairies, but there's also like similar beliefs within their like culture too.
A lot of if you're looking at more of like that natural aspect of it all,
like early peoples and early religions that are more naturally
like tied to the earth, tied to nature, you're gonna see fairies and like, or maybe not the word fairies, but like the description of fairies get tied into it a lot. Fairies also are called a couple different things. Fairy is the most common, but it's spelled Fairy. There's also Faerie. They can also be called fae, which they spelled fae like 6 different ways. It's like Fea, Fae, Fey, Fai. So
just like the different...
Oftentimes it means a little bit fair peoples, it's also called. Depends on kind of the origin and the culture from where it's coming from, as well as like...
There's the different languages and stuff.
Also the belief of what they really are. So like oftentimes you'll hear fae in relation to like they have their own realm.
Sure.
Whereas like fairy typically is like they just are here.
Sure.
So, according to some historians, such as Barthélemy de Herbelot, fairies were adopted from and influenced by the Paris of Persian mythology. Paris were angelic beings that were mentioned in antiquity in the pre-Islamic Persia as early as the Achaemenid Empire. I'm going to move past that word because I don't think I said it right. My bad. Fairies were later described in various Persian works in great detail, such as the Shahnameh by Ferdowsi. Paris was illustrated to be fair, beautiful, and extravagant nature spirits that were supported by wings. So, kind of thinking what you're thinking of, like with Tinkerbell.
Mm-hmm.
This may have influenced migratory Germanic and Eurasian settlers into Europe, or been transmitted during like early exchanges. So it's kind of believed that like when people were first coming through Europe, like the Germanic people, or Eurasian folks, these Persians were like, there's fairies, and they're like, got it. I'm gonna call them whatever I want.
Mm-hmm.
The similarities could also be attributed to the shared Proto-Indo-European mythology. In the Middle Ages, fairy was used like kind of as an adjective, meaning enchanted. Like if someone said you're a fairy knight or a fairy queen, you're like an enchanted queen or you're an enchanted knight.
Sure.
You're special. If someone called me a fairy, I'd be like, oh,
dainty.
Petite. Never in my life. But also it became a generic term for various like enchanted creatures during the late Middle English period. So literature of the Elizabethan era conflated elves with the fairies of Romance culture, rendering these terms kind of interchangeable.
Sure.
So again, fairies gets tied in with a lot of like mythological creatures and like folklore like creatures, elves.
Mm-hmm.
Gnomes and trolls, which I'm like, those are very different in my brain.
Yeah.
Trolls and gnomes, similar.
Yeah.
Fairies and trolls, so different.
Same world, different creature.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
The modern concept of fairy in the narrower sense is unique, to English folklore, later made diminutive in accordance with prevailing like tastes of Victorian era, like fairy tales for children. So fairies didn't used to be small back in the day until kind of the Victorian era when they were seen now more as like dainty and small, and you would tell fairy tales to kids.
Sure, that makes sense.
The Victorian era and the Edwardian era saw a heightened increase of interest in fairies. The Celtic revival cast fairies as part of Ireland's cultural heritage. Back to Ireland. Here we come. The Irish people had nothing better to do than to make up stories.
Oh, I love that.
Good for them. Carol Silver and others suggested that this fascination of English antiquarians arose from a reaction to greater industrialization and loss of other like old folk ways.
Sure.
So a lot of this, why they think it's coming from like Ireland, is Ireland was like bustling at the time. It used to be a very spread out farming community, and then as industrialization came, kind of like the stories of the past kind of fell to the wayside. And so they became fascinated with these folk stories because it was kind of their hold on to tradition. So to talk a little bit about more of their origins, we're going to talk first about being demoted angels.
Ooh.
I know. A Christian tenet held that fairies were a class of, quote, demoted angels. One story described a group of angels revolting and God ordering the gates of heaven shut. Those still in heaven remained angels, those in hell became demons, and those caught in between became fairies.
So like purgatory.
Purgatory fairies. Others wrote that some angels, not being godly enough, not evil enough for hell, were thrown out of heaven. This concept may explain the tradition of paying a like tithe to hell, as fallen angels, although not quite devils, they could be viewed as subjects of Satan. Like, so thank God for Christians, you know, we always make things creepy.
You might be possessed, but you might not, because they're not that evil.
They're bad, but they're not good. So King James I, in his dissertation, stated the term fairies referred to illusory spirits or demonic entities.
Okay. I feel like they thought any sort of like magic or witchcraft or witchery would be like fall into, like it must be the work of the devil.
But these fairies would prophesize to, consort with, and transported individuals they served. In medieval times, a witch or a sorcerer who had a pact with a familiar spirit might receive these services.
Okay.
In England's Theoscript circles of the 19th century, a belief that the angelic nature of fairies was reported. Entities referred to as divas, or devas.
Same.
Diva is a female version of a hustler. They were said to guide many processes of nature, such as the evolution of organisms, growth of plants, those sorts of things. Many of which resided in the sun. So these would be called solar angels.
Yeah.
Or solar fairies. The more earthbound devas included nature spirits, elementals, and fairies, which were described as appearing in the form of colored flames roughly the size of a human.
Oh, that's kind of large.
Huge! If you tell me I'm just watching a fire the size of me just jumping,
Yeah.
I'm going to throw up.
I also think it was evil.
Oh, shit. Arthur Conan Doyle, in his 1922 book, The Coming of the Fairies, The Theoscopic View of Fairies, reported that eminent theosophist E.L. Gardner had likened fairies to butterflies, whose function was to provide an essential link between the energy of the sun and the plants of earth, describing them as having no clear-cut shape, small, hazy, and somewhat luminous clouds of color with a bright, sparkish nucleus. The growth of a plant, which we regard as the customary and inevitable result of associating the three factors, sun, seed, and soil, would never take place if the fairy builders were absent. Wild. Another option, right, is demoted pagan deities. At one time, it was thought that fairies were originally worshipped as deities, such as like nymphs and tree spirits. And with the, prominence of the Christian church, reverence for these deities carried on, but in a dwindling state of like perceived power. Many depreciated deities of older folklore and myth were repurposed as fairies in Victoria's.
Sure.
Fiction. There we go. I'm like, I gotta get that out. And then, spirits of the dead's another one. One belief held that fairies were spirits of the dead. This derived from many factors common in various folklore and myth, same or similar tales of both ghosts and fairies. The Irish Sidhe, which is the origin for their name for fairies, were ancient burial mounds deemed dangerous to eat food in fairyland and Hades. The dead and fairies depicted as living underground. So, those are all various factors of these fairies.
Mm-hmm.
Diane Purkis observed an equating of fairies with untimely death. And oftentimes these people were seen as having unfinished lives. So, if you were feeling like you were unfinished, you became a fairy.
Like purgatory.
Purgatory! Wouldn't that be fun?
No.
Sorry. Listen, I'm not looking to die anytime soon. But you're telling me all I have to do to get into heaven while I bide my time is make plants grow? That sounds like retirement to me.
No, I don't love the idea of like, you're just stuck as a fairy.
You're not stuck forever.
But you don't know how long. They're like, you're not good, but at least you're not evil. Like, meh, no.
I'll tend a garden,
I'm not a fan.
One tale recounted a man caught by the fairies who found that whenever he looked steadily at a fairy, it appeared as a dead neighbor of his.
Yeah, no. See,
this.
No.
Don't look at him directly.
Oh, no, I cannot.
This theory was among the more common traditions, although many people had their doubts. And there's also a bunch of other different things like hidden people, fairies as demons. I skipped past that because it scared me.
Yeah, no, pass.
As well as like elementals all being tied within it.
Sure.
Some characteristics. Much folklore of fairies involved methods of protecting oneself from their malice by means of iron, charms, different herbs, or simply shunning locations known to be fairy land. Like, do anything you can to avoid offending them.
Right.
Less harmful pranks ascribed to the fairies included tangling the hair of sleepers into like fairy locks.
Just tie your hair in a knot. So when you wake up with a knot in your hair, it was your dead grandma who's playing a trick on you, who's still in purgatory. Isn't that great? Like, you can't tell me that's them working off their sins. No.
These were also called elf locks. So basically, every time you have a knot in your hair after sleeping,
every day,
my hair goes in a bun at night, so I don't know what to tell you. They could steal small items and leading a traveler astray. Some more
So when I get lost, it's just a past spirit.
it's a fairy. More dangerous behaviors were also attributed to fairies. Any form of sudden death might have stemmed
No,
from...
that's a banshee.
True. Might have stemmed from a fairy kidnapping.
Yikes.
Or the evident corpse of a magical replica of wood. I don't know what that means. Consumption or tuberculosis was sometimes blamed on fairies who forced young men and women to dance at revels every night, causing them to waste away from lack of rest. Rowan trees were considered to be sacred to fairies and a charm tree to protect from one's home.
Interesting.
So, a lot of it was just, I didn't realize that they were bad things.
I mean, Tinkerbell was kind of a selfish bee.
Excuse you, what do you mean? She died when she didn't have enough attention. Love her.
Yeah.
Sometimes fairies are described as assuming the guise of an animal. In Scotland, it was like peculiar to the fairy women. I don't know why they use that word. Anyways, in Scotland, it was normal for fairy women to assume the shape of deer, while witches became mice, rabbits, cats, gulls, or black sheep. In order to frighten a farmer in one story who pastured his herd on fairy ground, a fairy queen took on the appearance of a great horse with the wings of an eagle and a tail like a dragon. She would hiss loud and spit fire. She would then change into a little man who had like a bad leg with a bull's head. Ew. And again, would just like play around the fire. So that's one of the tales of a fairy who does things. There's also so many stories and like different legends about fairies and things that you can do. Now, with Christian beliefs, obviously back in the time they thought that fairies were real. They definitely were like, yep, you should be careful because they're demons or fallen angels. Now, basically Christians have now kind of moved on and said like, nope, they don't exist. So don't worry about it. Don't think about it. You're fine. One person, for example, his last name is Hart. It's David Bentley Hart. He's a theologian. And he, as example, wrote, of course mermaids exist, or to be more precise, of course water spirits and magical marine beings of every kind are real and numerous, and in certain circumstances somewhat dangerous. The modern reports of real encounters with mermaids or other water spirits such as 2 from Zimbabwe, 1 from South Africa, 3 from northeastern India, and so on, are so ingenuous, well attested, and credible that only a brute would refuse to believe them, and there is a real moral imperative not dismissing such tales as lies or delusions.
So they're saying they believe in mermaids.
So they believe in mermaids is what we're all trying to say. I know, and I saw that, I was like, I'm reading the quote. We're talking about mermaids again.
Sold.
Yeah, so that was a little bit of the history of fairies. I think when I really think about fairies, I think a lot about like making fairy gardens as a kid, or even
well, that's at that point you're trying to attract them. You're not trying to like scare them away.
I did not think they were bad. I don't to this day, like knowing
maybe
all
they're
that
just
I know,
misunderstood.
Well, knowing all that I know, even with reading it, I think there was bits and pieces of childhood growing up folklore of like, don't offend them.
Yeah.
But it was also just like, I made a fairy garden for you. I can't offend you.
No kidding.
I don't know. I always think those are such cute little... I think fairy gardens are cute. And I'll let you talk. I just talked for 25 minutes.
I think it's a kind of a fun, like, cultural thing. I guess I never really realized that fairies were kind of an overarching term for a lot of mythical creatures or lands or things like that, but it makes sense when you think about like the term fairy tale or something like that, and it meaning more enchanted. Oh gosh, sorry. But I just always thought they're more like silly, whatever, and never really put a lot of merit into them actually existing, even as a child.
No,
but
I don't think I ever really was like, fairies exist. I think nature's weird.
Yeah.
And it does a lot of weird things. And there's a lot of energy out there, but I don't necessarily know if I believe that has encompassed into a living creature.
Especially between like the whole religious like heaven and hell, fallen angel thing. That to me is just a little
a little weird. A
Yeah.
little wild. There's a lot of stuff. What we've learned from this is that you need to watch Brave all the way through and through, so then you'll know what will-o'-the-wisps are.
That's a good important point.
Huge. And maybe you should just not offend fairies.
Try to just be kind to people.
Be kind to the nature. Be kind to people. And if you die, garden.
Life lesson.
Life lesson.
Well, now that we're into spring, I was kind of just thinking back to my college experience and spring break.
Oh, God, yeah.
And I've seen a lot of stuff this year about how, like, Miami put out that whole commercial saying they're breaking up with spring breakers.
Yeah, they don't want you to come.
And they don't want you to come because they've been so crazy.
Yeah.
And then now I've seen a lot of TikToks of, like, people traveling to, like, Universal, and it's taking them hours to even get into the park. Things like that. And how I never really had, like, a true spring break experience. Like, I never went with friends on a trip over spring break. The only spring break trip I actually did was with our family.
Yep.
Right as COVID was happening.
COVID was hitting, yeah.
And we didn't really know what we were doing because we were just going to Kansas to visit Jake. And we thought, there's no one in Kansas.
There will be nobody. We're all driving together. There's not going to be
Mhm.
anybody there.
We stayed on an Airbnb. And so I thought you never really had a big spring break experience. Either you did your one trip.
I did do the one trip, but it wasn't like a spring break trip.
Mm-hmm.
It was a mission trip. So a little different. And now looking back on it, I think I wish I would have rather done like a spring break trip versus like a mission.
Well, that leads me into my perfect question for you, Emily.
Hit me.
Imagine now as adults.
Okay.
We're planning a spring break trip. So not like college Emily and Hannah.
Cool.
Like
25-year-old Emily and Hannah?
25-year-old Emily, Hannah. If we were to plan a spring break trip now as adults, what would you want to do?
That's hard because I think in so many ways I would love to go somewhere warm and tropical because I'm currently pale and pasty and I miss the warmth. However, yeah, it gets tricky when you're like, I don't want to go to Daytona Beach or Miami or like even like Punta Cana, the DR, those sorts of things are so
busy this time of year.
Busy with college students this time of year. And I'm like, I'm okay. I don't want to do those things. But I'm thinking somewhere warm. I know a ton of people go to Costa Rica too. Oh, I don't know. Because I don't really want to go to Arizona. No offense, Arizona. Just no desire. Maybe somewhere in like New Mexico. Maybe like an Albuquerque.
Sure.
Or
High School Musical experience.
Oh,
I think it would be fun. I've never been to Mexico or anything like that. And there's definitely like smaller resorts that you can go to that like I would potentially do something like that. Like I wouldn't want to go to like a more party resort. I want to go to more of like a spa, relaxing, like I'll sit by the pool but not like sit and party resort.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of what I was thinking more.
Yeah, because right now I'm getting all the videos on my feed of, like, people doing the Oklahoma drill, which I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like you lay down, you get up, and you just slam into each other. And I'm like, no. You know what I don't want to do? That.
Yeah, no, I am more of, like, a relax. Here's my type of vacation. I'm the extremes. Either I want to be, like, going to some place where I am busy, like, going around, seeing all the sights, but I don't want to, like, party.
I want to go to, like, Epcot.
I want to go to, like, Epcot, and I'm in New York, and I'm doing all the touristy, like, whatever, those types of things.
Yeah.
Or I want to lay there and do nothing.
Yeah.
There's, like, no in-between, no, like, serious partying happening.
I'm a big fan now of, like, I want a cabin where there's a hot tub.
And I'm going to drink, but I'm not going to be, like, clubbing it up. I just want to lay there and drink.
I would love, when you think of a resort, I want to be by, like, a pool
Or
where,
beach,
like,
and they just keep bringing me drinks, and I can just lay there.
I can just like hold my hand out, and someone will put like a real tropical fruity drink in my hand. I think that's where I'm at now. 21-year-old me probably would have said some like real big party spot, you know, like the Daytona Beaches or the Fort Lauderdales and blah, blah, blah. But now I'm like, you know what? I don't want to do that. And then you have to fight people, and it's like wherever you're going, there's people. Yeah. You want a spot on the beach, you better get there early, even though you're hungover from the night before.
Right.
So good luck with that. If you're going to go get food, no, you're not, because the waits everywhere.
Crazy.
Horrific.
Yeah. No. It's just not my
cup of tea anymore. No. Oh, I would totally, this is me going in the opposite direction, right? How nice it would be to go to like Alaska and just do a cabin in Alaska.
I don't think I want to go in March though.
If there's a hot tub, I'm there.
I think at that point I've had so much winter that I'm like,
no more winter.
No more winter.
Fair. I get it. But I'm like, I'm a sucker for a hot tub.
I would love that, like over Christmas break.
Oh,
I would do that.
That's fair.
Or like, I imagine like Aspen or Denver over Christmas break. I would do that. And then there can still be a hot tub. But like, I'm still more okay with all the snow.
Yeah.
By spring break, I'm like, give me a tan.
Give me a daiquiri in the sunshine.
And I'll just lay there and read my book. Or take a nap.
If there's one thing, whenever I tan outside, I am cashing out. And then I will burn on whatever side I'm falling asleep on.
But, it's worth it. That's what I'm thinking more.
Yeah. Then I'm too sweaty to, like, flip to the other side after I've fallen asleep. So I just get up. I'm like, either my back is tan or my front is tan.
The pool's there, so you can hop in, cool off for a second, flip over.
It's always nice. Were you ever the type to put, like, lemon juice in your hair to try and lighten it more in the summer?
I've never done that, no. My hair, I feel like, naturally kind of lightens.
Yeah, I mean,
I never get blonde, but I would get, like, highlights and stuff. I never tried lemon juice. Why does it work?
It helps, like, lighten your hair. If you ever tried, like, Suns In is one of the sprays. There's another, like, spray now on the market, but you spray it in your hair, and a lot of it is, like, basically lemon juice. You can do it for cheap at home, but, like, dilute some lemon juice in some water, spray it in your hair so it gets a little damp, and then you let it dry, and it helps lift your hair quicker. I don't know if it's good for your hair.
Probably not.
But I used to do that all the time as a kid. Not as a kid, or like when I was in college.
Sure.
Because I'm looking at myself in the viewfinder now, and I look like I have brown hair.
We have almost the same shade of hair.
Ding.
That's crazy.
So, and I know my hair is, the older I get, the darker my hair is getting. And I'm not sure how I feel about it quite yet. Kind of miss my days of like bright white hair, basically. But it's hard to maintain that light of hair if it's not like natural. I also need to wash my hair more often. It looks dark because it's a little greasy.
TMI. But now you know all our deepest, darkest secrets. We'll see you on a beach somewhere, hopefully soon. If you like what you hear, definitely follow our show, share it with your friends, and follow us on our socials at IDon'tThinkSo_EH, or check out our YouTube at IDTS Conspiracies.
We'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.